Hey seniors, welcome to day 3 of benchmark review. Let's work really hard today and make today count. Today we're going to be talking about representation of data. I know how much you love this, especially Shavance. So let's go ahead and get started. On your notes page, go ahead and draw your line. In the top left-hand corner, go ahead and write representation of data. So we just need to remind ourselves really quickly, when we talk about rate of change, we're of course talking about slope. Write that in your notes page, please. And when you say initial value, of course we mean y-intercept. An initial value, you might see it represented as initial cost or initial speed or some form of initial, meaning just like the first thing that you do. All right, so when you are comparing data, be sure to turn all graphs and tables and whatever representation you get into equations. It's much easier to compare rate of change and initial value when they're in equations. Be sure to stay super organized. Whenever you get like tables and graphs and equations, make sure that you're labeling your equations as like function 1 and function 2. Write them side by side so you have capacity and an easy way to just stay organized. All right, so let's talk about this first one. Go ahead and write this down on your notes page. Make sure you're taking really good notes. We're going to start coming around and making sure that you guys are taking way better notes. Every teacher in this room knows what your notes page should look like, so make sure that you are taking notes. All right, I have function 1, which is y equals 4x plus 3, and function 2, which is this table. What I'm interested in is which one of these has the greater rate of change. Well, I already have function 1 as my an equation form. I need to turn this table into an equation. So how do I do that? Well, the first thing I need to do is find the slope. And the way I find slope is change in y over change in x. So let's go ahead and do that. If I find the change in y, I have -2 minus -7 over 0 minus -1. And again, I got those numbers from the x side. So all I need to do now is go ahead and simplify this out. -2 minus -7, you should see double negatives, that means keep, change. That's going to give me -2 plus 7 will leave me with 5, and then 0 minus -1, keep, change, just leave me with 1. So I have a slope here of 5. Now, I have half of my equation. I need to figure out what my y-intercept is. So half of my equation, I have 5x. Now, this is the part that some of us are still getting tripped up on. Wherever x is 0 on my table, the value of y is the y-intercept. So, boom, table. X is 0, that means -2 is my y-intercept. Now that I have these two equations, I can go ahead and compare them. We're interested in which one has the greater rate of change. Well, I'm looking for which one has the steeper slope. And I go ahead and see that 5 is larger than 4, which means that function 2 is increasing at a much larger rate. And that would be a good sentence to write. Function 2 has the greater rate of change because the slope is increasing at a faster rate. All right. So this question is asking me which function has the steeper slope. Again, I have my function 1, which is my table. Function 2, which is y equals 3/2 x minus 5. Write this in your notes page. All right, since I already have my equation, again, I just want to find the equation of the table. So again, I do the same thing. Change in y over change in x. So I have -1 minus -5 over 0 minus -3. Now, if I keep, change, -1 plus 5 will leave me with 4. 0 minus -3, keep, change, will leave me with 4/3. Since this doesn't simplify into a whole number, I know I have a slope for the table of y equals 4/3 x. Don't forget your variable. Some of you guys are forgetting your variable on these equations. Without your variable, it's wrong. Now I need to figure out what my y-intercept is. So I'm going to go to my table. Wherever x is 0, y is the y-intercept. So my y-intercept here is -1. All right. Now that I can have two equations, this is function 1, function 2, I can go ahead and compare them. But remember, whenever I see these fractions for slope, I need to go ahead and turn them into decimals because it'll be easier to compare. Well, I know off the top of my head that 3/2 is 1.5 x minus 5. But I'm going to go ahead and divide out 4/3. So Top goes in, bottom goes out. 3 goes into 4 one time. 1 times 3 is 3. 4 minus 3 is 1. 3 does not go into 1, so I'll go ahead and put a decimal. Then I can add a 0. 3 goes into 10 3 times. 3 times 3 is going to leave me with 9. I can go ahead and say that this is going to be 1.3 repeating. So this equation, function 1, if I turn 4/3 into a decimal, my equation will be y equals 1.3 repeating x minus 1. So now that I have these two equations, I can go ahead and answer my question. So the equation has a steeper slope, which was function 2, than the table slope of -3. Well, both of those are actually comparing my y-intercept, so I know that's not a good answer. The table has a steeper slope of 4/3 than the slope of the equation, which is 3/2. What that's telling me is that 4/3 is larger than 3/2, which if I look at my decimals is not true because 1.5 is minimally larger than 1.3. So I can go ahead and cross that out. Alright, the equation has a steeper slope of 3/2 than the slope of the table, 4/3. That is true because since 1.5 is larger, the equation, which was function 2, is increasing at a much larger rate than the table is, which is at 4/3. So again, you see how I did process of elimination there to arrive at my answer choice? That's what you need to do as well on your benchmark. Alright, let's do one last one. Do not write this down. I will tell you what to write. The Crescent City Cab Company charges a setup fee plus a charge for every mile traveled. The table shows the total cost of a cab ride based on the number of miles. Alright, so which of the following equations could represent, if United Cabs charges the same set fee but a different charge per mile, which of the following equations could represent the total cost y of a cab ride that is x miles? Well, what I need to figure out first, since this table is representing the Crescent City Cab Company, is what is the equation of this table? Because then I can compare it to my answer choices. So again, I do the same thing. Change in y over change in x. Make sure the table is written down on your notes page. We're coming around to check. So I have 750 minus 625 over 2 minus 1. Well, if I subtract this out, this will come out to 125 over 1, which is just 125. So, my equation for Crescent City Cabs is 1.25x, and then I need to figure out what my y-intercept is. Alright, if this is increasing, whoops, didn't mean to do that. If my table is increasing by 0.25 each time, if I just go back to where x is 0, if I go back, I can go ahead and subtract 125 I can subtract 1.25 from $6.25, and I'll end up with $5 even. So my y-intercept for my equation here is $5. Alright, now let's go back to our answer choices. What I'm interested in is which of the following equations could represent the total cost of a cab ride that is x miles. Now, if it says that United Cabs charges the same setup fee but a different charge per mile, if it charges the same setup fee, I'm looking for an equation that has $5 as the y-intercept. So I can go ahead and eliminate B and C because it has y-intercept of $3, which means that its setup fee is $3, not $5. Now, if United Cabs charges the same setup fee but a different charge per mile, I'm looking for a slope that is different from 125. Boom, answer choice C. Y equals $1.50 per mile plus $5 for its setup fee. And that satisfies my answer. All right, guys, that's going to be it from me today. Let's go ahead and practice.